All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in today. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I am your host, Adam Messer. I'm here in the WRUU studios, WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And my special guest today is Lisa Czarina Michaud. She's an author. Welcome back, Lisa. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you back for the second hour. Anybody out there, if you missed the first hour, don't worry. You can go back and listen to the Adam Messer Show on the podcast. It's on theadammessershow.com or on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/Adam Messer or the Adam Messer Show on all of your favorite podcast apps like Stitcher and Apple Podcasts and Audible and those things out there. So you can go back and listen at any time for the interview. But the second hour, I want to continue on our conversation about storytelling. And Sebastian's in the studio. So Sebastian, would you mind playing a little bit of live music for us this hour? So here's Sebastian Messer, and then Lisa and I are we're gonna pick up right where we left off last hour. Oh, wow, Bass, that was really good. Thank you.
Really beautiful. Thank you, Sebastian.
And we've got Darlene and Terry Dremel sent a message, and they're good friends of mine, and they listen to the show very often. They said that this is a very interesting interview, and that they said, "Good job, Bass."
Thank you.
So Lisa, like last hour, right by the end of the hour, we were talking about, we were talking about like your first project or your first book that you kind of felt like it just didn't hit, right? And I off the air, everybody, Lisa and I were talking. It was about the same time where I wrote my first novel, and it just didn't hit either for me. I mean, it just didn't do it. And so I think that's really interesting because you grew from there, and I feel like I've grown from there. So how did that affect you, and what did that do for you for your writing career, and how did it help shape you and help you to grow as a person?
Well, it definitely gave me that discipline, that, sitting down every day to write for 2 hours a day. Because I did it every day, it's just a day can't go by where I don't write, except for in the summer. I do take summers off from writing, and I spend it reading. But I developed that discipline of just writing, whether it was going to go anywhere or not. You still have to write, and the inspiration will come to you. You can't chase inspiration. It'll come when it comes. And there are some days when I write for 2 hours, and I'm like, okay, this wasn't one of the best days, and that's okay. And that's what I learned from that experience, because I had spent a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, writing something that didn't go anywhere. And if I can spend 2 years writing something that didn't go anywhere, I can spend a day writing something that doesn't go anywhere. And you just keep going. That's okay, because the inspiration will come, the story will come, and the story did come, and it fell out of the sky, where I was like thinking of these characters, these fictional characters in my head, and I'm like, who are these people? And they were keeping me up at night with their dialogue, where I just said, okay, fine. And I just took my computer. I'm like, let's just write this thing. And I just started writing. And I banged out a manuscript in 3 months. I started October 17th, 2019, right before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I had a manuscript printed. I mean, it was a first draft, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a polished draft by any means, and the story had gone through many revisions and had gone through different twists and turns and had developed in ways I couldn't even imagine. But the story was there, the characters were there, and because it came from the heart and it came from a place of just total inspiration, I banged it out in 3 months.
Wow.
And another thing of something I tried to do the first time around, I think I sat down and I said, I want to sound like a good writer. And you know, when you want and try to sound like anything, it's like sitting down with a guitar and saying, you know, I want to write the next Led Zeppelin 2. Of
Mm-hmm.
course you're not going to write the next Led Zeppelin 2. It's going to be terrible. You can't go into something wanting to be something else. And so I was using words that weren't comfortable for me. I wanted to sound like some established writer, and it came out very uncomfortable. It was an uncomfortable read, and it showed. And with this book that's coming out in September, Slanted and Disenchanted, I said, I'm going to just write what feels good for me, what sounds like my voice.
Your voice, yeah.
Turned to be my character's voice. And the result is a really fun read and very smooth read.
I think that's a big part of the learning and growth process for anything with yourself. You know, I know for me at least it was, because I've never tried to write like that. Right, I've never tried to write like that, but I had to change my writing style a lot because business and academic writing is different than writing for fiction. Or it's different from, you know, writing like an article for the newspaper or whatever. And it's just so funny. I remember when I first started writing for the newspaper, I was trying to write at that same level, and it was just, I don't know. The reading level, the average reading level in the U.S. is like an 8th grade reading level. And so, not that I had to dumb it down, but I had to simplify my language a lot for my audience, because I wanted people to be able to read it and not get hung up on, you know, the vocabulary of things. And not that I was trying to dumb it down, not at all, but I just had to change my writing style because I had to think about my audience. And, you know, that's one of the things I feel like is different with business writing versus writing fiction, because you have different readers, and you have to think about who your readers are, and you have to think about, even if it's just you're writing it for yourself, you know, and you're writing the story, you know. So I love that you recognize that you were trying to write out of your own style. Like it just wasn't you. You know, it's almost like, have you ever tried on an outfit or like a t-shirt or something like that, and you're like, man, that thing looks great, and then you put it on, and you're like, no, it's just not for me.
Yeah, that's the analogy I sometimes use. Like the words came out like an ill-fitting suit.
Oh, okay. Well, even look at that connection.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, I was actually on another writer's podcast, and that was the analogy I used to describe that first manuscript.
Yeah.
And just like what you just said, it's exactly it. That's funny.
Yeah, it might be great for somebody else, but it's just, you know, not a good fit for me. And that's what I had to do. I actually have a similar story with recently. I published my first fiction book in 2018, and it was a short novella. Then I wrote the second book, but it took me a while to write the second book. In the between, I had written something else, and it didn't publish. I didn't publish it, and I waited so long for the second book that like nobody wanted to read it that I knew that had read the first one, and it fell flat. And I used that as a way to change things up, because I published the first one in 2018. I published the second one at the end of 2019, and I used that experience to launch my publishing company, Valhalla Books, which is a small print publisher. And I've learned a lot since then. I've changed it up, but also one of the things that happened was I had someone who read like the anthology that I published, and they read another one of my short stories. And when I relaunched my vampire series underneath Valhalla Books, and when they read the first one, they were like, "Oh, your writing was so much better now than it was." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I wrote that story in 2018. 3 years I've been progressing as a writer or whatever." And but it was kind of funny because I was thinking to myself, I was like, "Well, I'm glad that you feel like I've written, I've improved as a writer." But it wasn't. They didn't really say it like that. It was more like like they felt like I should have gone back and rewritten the first one, kind of. And
okay.
And I was like, I'm not going to do that because it's like a photograph. I mean, I can't go back and look like I looked when I was 20. I'm not going to try to go back and look like what I looked like at 20. So I just thought it was interesting because when you said your mom wouldn't buy it, I have to tell you, I get more support from strangers than I do from people I know. I don't know why it is like that, but it's just true.
Yeah.
I get like our community, our writing community, like you and I met through a mutual writing community, and here we are supporting each other.
Yeah, totally. I don't know why that is. I guess our families want to be honest with us, or they're busy. I don't know, but I appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it because my mom gave me some excellent feedback.
Oh yeah. I'm sure she came from a point of love with it. I mean, she wasn't trying to down you or anything like that.
No, most certainly not. No, but with this book, she loved it. She would call me and she'd be like, "I can't believe that just happened," and like as if they were real people. And she was like very affected by certain scenes and certain conversations. Why did he say that to her? And I was like, yes, this is the.
If she, you got her on the hook. You got her. That's good.
Yeah.
And I love, I tell you what, I do have some friends and family, and like my mom's a big supporter of stuff I do, but she doesn't read my stuff. So, and that's fine. I mean, because it's just not her genre, but she listens to the radio show and all. And so I look at it like this. I tell people that my stuff's not going to be for everybody. And I don't expect it to be. I don't, like if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. If it's something that you might enjoy or somebody that does enjoy it, like for example, like your story, my vampire story, it's called Blood Thrasher. It's set in 1989 about a heavy metal vampire band. And I wrote like a full on heavy metal song, put it in the thing, and then they go through like the whole little story arc too. They go through, they travel from, they're coming to Savannah. She's from Cincinnati originally. Anna is my main character. And so she hates being a vampire. She hates it. She just hates it, loathes it. Well, everything, their whole world just gets blown to smithereens by the end of it. And then they have to go out to Seattle. So it's in the 90s in Seattle. So there's a big, grunge music scene and all that. That's the second book. They're out there and, they're going through, this stuff. In the third book, they end up having to go to Louisiana in the Baton Rouge, and they have to fight, they have to fight to try to get what they want, basically. I don't want to do any spoilers, but, they have to go through this whole thing. And by the end of it, like one of the themes is like, you don't always get what you want, but also sometimes the thing you want is not the thing that was supposed to be right for you.
Yeah. And
that, I think that mirrors life, because sometimes it's like you're right. Like I wrote this book back in 2013 2014, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a great book, and just wasn't. So but it helped me. My friend's feedback gave me a lot of help, because it inspired me, or not necessarily inspired, but I started learning a lot more about my craft and publishing and doing all that kind of stuff. And, spent a lot of time learning, spending time thinking about the formula of, what is involved in a good storytelling, so it helped me a lot. So, We got to do station ID real quick. Everybody, you're tuning in today. This is the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and I'm here today with my special guest, Lisa Czarina Michaud. She's an author, and we're here on WRU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So, Lisa, you have your book coming out in September?
Yes, it's my new book. It's my first book. I'm a debut novelist.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know you're a few books in, but this is my first rodeo. I can say that. And it's definitely been a steep learning curve. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a steep learning curve. But it's a young adult book about two kids post-high school, and they're just trying to find themselves through music and eventually through each other. And, it goes through themes as simple as, that transition into adulthood, that post-high school time when you're still living with your folks, you're not quite paying rent yet because you're working at a little day job, but you still feel like an adult. You're still, you're voting. My characters become 21 in the book, so
oh wow,
it's just that weird age where you can go to a bar. But I remember at 21, it felt very strange. I didn't drink, but the idea that I could, it just feels very. It just feels weird, kind of like the first time you vote. You're like, you feel that you're technically an adult, and I'm putting them in air quotes, but you still feel like you're in high school. Like I was still wearing my retainer when I was voting,
Oh wow. See, I was the opposite. I had to grow up pretty fast, and so I was already I was the opposite. So that's pretty cool because that's how my kids are. What you're talking about. And for me, it was different because I was already living on my own and, already had responsibilities, stuff like that. And I started drinking before I should have, but I quit. And so it's kind of interesting you talking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was more of a goody 20-year-old, and, then I moved to LA, and then I guess I made up for it. But anyway, so I'm just kidding. The story is about this, that transitional time, that high school time.
That young adulthood.
Yeah, young adulthood, and how we respond to our parents, and where we have our own opinions, and sometimes our parents aren't always open to those opinions because they still look at us like we're kids. I mean, I'm dealing with that at 40. I'm visiting my mom, and she asked me where I was going, which of course I'll tell her where I'm going. I was going to the supermarket, but and I still feel like I'm 17 in my mom's house. And I'm going to be 40 in September. So the book kind of touches on that, and music and pop culture it's like a third character in the book because
it's the road.
It's like what they connect with and disconnect with.
What kind of music do they play?
So they come from two different schools of music. So Carla, she's more interested in feminist punk and also the 60s girl groups, bands like Phil Spector groups. And he is more into German space rock, progressive rock, and then the Grateful Dead, and really more intricate, instrumental, kind of instrumental bands that really, really play their instruments in such a creative way. And so I kind of have fun with these two genres because these two genres don't really cross.
Right.
And so I did that on purpose. And the dialogue, because of that, is hilarious, where he thinks the bands that she listens to, that they don't know how to play their instruments. And she thinks that the bands that he listens to, they just sound like alien space music. And so they kind of just have fun, kind of teasing each other, but also building that tension between each other. And, of course, there's going to be a romantic element, maybe not, so we kind of play around with that a little bit. But in the end, they play garage rock because he's on the drums, she's on the guitar, and I'm kind of inching us into that early 2000 rock revival where it was all those
like that heavy rock, yeah.
The White Stripes, the Black Keys, then there were the Strokes, even though there's four of them. But that rock revival, just that simple kind of garagey sound.
Yeah,
and that's where I'm inching them towards.
Did you ever listen to that song "Children of the Sun" by Billy Thorpe?
No.
So when you were talking about like that rock, that space rock or whatever, that German space rock, Children of the Sun is a trippy, like, I don't even remember when it came out. It came out in 1979, but this song is all about like aliens coming to Earth. And it's, like those 70s ballad rock, like really long, kind of a song or whatever that they had back then. Anyway, I was on a it's so crazy how I even ever heard of this song. But I was on a city bus one day, and I was sitting across from this dude, and this guy, I could hear it coming from his little headset. You remember back in the day they had a little Walkman and a little cassette player, Headman and whatever. And I could hear it playing through his headset, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." And I was, I like music a lot, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I listen to that song?" I said, "It sounds really cool." And of course, today people are like, "Oh my God, don't talk to me!" What's this guy trying to rob me or something? But anyway, I was a kid. I was like probably 18, years old, 19 maybe, and the guy let me listen to it, and it was this song "Children of the Sun" by Billy Thorpe. And I was like, oh my gosh. So when you were talking about him listening to that, I was just thinking about that song that Billy Thorpe did. But it's one of those, if you never listened to it, you probably be like, oh, that's exactly what I was talking about, this that kind of music.
I just wrote it down on my paper right here. I'm totally going to listen to it because so the thing is with these, they're two influences. I love both of those genres.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, so I love like that progressive 1970s rock. I like this kind of music from Germany from the 60s and 70s called krautrock. I love it. Where this like the drumming is almost cyclical. It's like I consider it like the introduction to disco. But I also like that 90s grunge sound with like, girl bands, of course, Nirvana. And so I have that side too. And that really shaped me, who I became as a teenager and then into an adult because, I'm an element of Gen X. I'm not official Gen X, Adam, you are, because you were born in 76.
Yeah.
80 and 81 were kind of...
You were on the cusp right before millennials. Yeah, you're like an elder millennial.
It's weird, yeah, because
I don't know what they call them, the in-betweeners.
We've had so many names. One I heard we were called the Oregon Trail generation.
Yeah.
Okay, you laugh. You know that reference. And then
that was like the only video game on like the Apple computer back in the day.
Yes. Yeah. So that's our generation. But then
you died of dysentery.
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't really have a generation, and I definitely I address that in the book because the book does take place in 2000, so there's so many 90s references because 2000 we were still talking about the 90s, and it wasn't nostalgic yet because it had just happened. Mm-hmm. But as we were transitioning from grunge into like pop music, when it was like all of a sudden MTV wasn't playing, there weren't guitars on MTV anymore, there were backup dancers. There was that weird transition, and for people my age, it was weird to see. It was like, wait a minute, we felt too old for Britney Spears, but in a way we were too young to really enjoy the heyday of Nirvana. So it's a very weird place for, born in 80 and 81, it's kind of like limbo, and I address that in the book because I feel like we're never, this micro generation is never addressed in pop culture because it's either Gen X or millennial. And so I'm like, hey, we're here too. I'm like raising my hand.
Yeah, I've been hearing that age group being called like elder millennials because they are between millennials and Gen X. And so my sister was born in 82. My other sister was born in 77. And so yeah, it's crazy. I know it's kind of weird, but a lot of that like generational stuff or whatever, I look at it like music and technology and there's always like social, political, and economic factors, and so that's one of the things coming up. Like we were talking about, I've been on the internet since 95. You know what I mean? I was 18. I've had the internet since 1995, and seeing the evolution of that one song, "I Was Alive and I Waited for It," I think it was NXS, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's talking about the Berlin Wall coming down, but you know, that's what I think of. It's like, you know, and then you think about all the folks. Well, I'll say it like this: the folks that embrace technology, and that they, you know, I've got some friends that, you know, they're pretty savvy, and they're up in their 70s, and you know, I think the folks that are the adopters of technology, and they, you know, not necessarily that, you know, the cutting edge stuff, but the ones that they embrace the, you know, change, and they stay up with it. Yeah, they see all these changes and all that, and you know, with the generations between, like, it's so crazy because forever and ever and ever, it's like, oh, just baby boomers and millennials, and you know, now it's like Gen Z, and like lately they've been talking, you know, more about Gen X. I think it's because, you know, a lot of the boomers are getting older, but you know, the Gen Xers are like in their 40s and 50s, and but the baby boomers, like, you know, like that, when talking about that, they've been around and they've seen a lot of this different stuff. But when I was a kid growing up, I had a chance to talk to, you know, like my grandparents who, you know, like my grandpa was in World War II, you know, my other grandpa was in the Korean War. My great grandparents, they grew up, you know, they were born in 1910, 1911. And, you know, so getting to see how, you know, different things and, you know, in their lives, you know, have changed. And, yeah, so I think it's interesting how micro generations or in between generations or whatever. I totally feel you there. I mean, like, it's one of those things. Like when I was growing up, my aunts and uncles, some of them were like 10, 12 years older than me, so they were still little kids, and we were playing, you know, outside, or we're listening to music. And I grew up listening to that stuff, and then, you know, you hear like MTV and all that, and then Nirvana, and, you know, and Pearl Jam, and I worked at a record store when Britney Spears dropped her first song. So, you know.
You worked in a record store? Whoa, I'm like super impressed. I'm so impressed and in awe of record store employees. Like, you got coolest job ever.
It was all right. Yeah, it was all right.
You're dashing my dreams.
Well, we did. It was like that. It like now record stores are like so retro and so cool. But then we sold CDs and tapes. We didn't have records, but they still called it a record store, you know.
Did you work in like a chain, or was it like an independent one?
It was a small. They had like 5 or 6 stores, but it was a small, independently owned company, and they're no longer in business. But I just remember when we, you know, when we were there, it was '97, and pop had kind of died off because of grunge. And then you had the Spice Girls, right? They had that huge hit or whatever. And then Britney Spears had her hit. And then it was like there was all this pop that just started coming back out of nowhere. And the weird thing about it was, like, the music industry didn't know really what to do with grunge and all that, because they were alternative. They were so anti everything. They didn't care about record sales, and they didn't care about doing tours and all that stuff. But then you got pop, and it's like, oh, well, the machine's back in order. You know, you could take somebody and you can make them into, you know, a giant superstar again or whatever. And then you had MP3s, you know, and you had Napster, and that totally turned the music industry on its head. So. And
then you have Metallica bringing you to court.
Right. Yeah.
And then Metallica gets mad. So once Metallica gets mad, it's all fun and games until Metallica gets mad.
Right. And today, like, you don't even really own the music or the movies and stuff. You own a license for it, you know, and it's just weird. But yeah, I think in between, like with the generational stuff, like TikTok, for example. TikTok is like a new social media thing. It's been around for a little while. They actually rebranded from a different thing that they were called Musical.ly. But TikTok, there are so many people on there, and you get people from like a lot of different, you know, generations and eras or whatever. But when you look at stuff, you figure out like, okay, well, there are differences, and then there are a lot more similarities, you know? So I think it's just one of those funny things, like, because I see all these stereotypes about Gen Xers, And I'm like, well, I could kind of see it in a way. But it's the same thing, like when they talk about boomers or they talk about millennials and then they talk about the Gen Zs, and I'm like, it's just kind of like a lot of hype. A lot of hype. So
Yeah, I agree.
it's almost like
Definitely.
the folks that get mad about like a reboot, like, oh, that's not what I grew up with. Like, well, man, honestly, I loved this stuff when I was growing up, but I don't mind the new stuff either. you know
Yeah, totally. You have to be open-minded to the old and new. We can look back and enjoy, and then we can look forward and learn. Then
Yeah, it's like if you really like the old stuff, go back to the old stuff. Like if you like classic rock, listen to classic rock, but don't knock the new stuff because it's not classic rock.
Totally, I totally agree. I
feel that that's the same way with books, with writing and with books, because you get there's so many people that write, there's so many people that publish books and whatever, and that's why I said earlier, if my thing's not for somebody, it's okay. I'm not gonna knock them for not liking my stuff.
Well, yeah, it's like when someone's like, "Oh, I wrote a book and it's for everyone," and it's like, "What did you write? A pamphlet then?"
Yeah.
You can't write a book for everyone. Like I've gotten great feedback from people who, for people who didn't like my book, it's like, this is perfect. I know who my reader is.
Right.
And I have a coach that I work with, and he's like, that's great if this person doesn't like your book. You don't want that person to like your book because it's not your ideal reader.
Yeah, you don't want somebody to have a switch and bait. They go into thinking, oh, this book's going to be like a light romance type thing, and then it turns out to be something completely different. Like
totally.
with my vampire books, they're not what's been real popular with vampire books lately, like light romance or whatever. My books are not romantic like that. They have romance in them, but they're not romance books. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I've had some people say, "Oh, that's not what I expected." I'm like, "Well, like the genre, it's horror. I didn't label it as romance." So
well, they clearly are ignoring the genre. If it's horror, you should definitely pay attention to that. Yeah, my book has an element of romance in it too, and I've been asked, is it romance? And I say most certainly not, because when you're writing romance, there's a different flow to it.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah.
Yes, there is, like your book, there is that element. But I'd say my book, it's a deep friendship, and that's more important.
Yeah, like a buddy novel or a buddy book or whatever. Those are great too. Like when they're friends and they have to go through this journey, and those are those are some of my favorite movies. Like The Other Guys. You ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh, that's a great one. It's like a buddy cop movie.
Okay.
But I love those kind where they like The Odd Couple. You remember The Odd Couple?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, like a buddy movie.
Yeah, they did a reboot of that. That didn't last very long, of The Odd Couple. I think it was with Matthew Perry from Friends.
Yeah, I meant the original.
No, I know. Yeah, me too. And then just speaking of reboots and revivals, like they tried to reboot that a few years ago, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, well, I can't believe we got to do the station ID stuff. So
enjoy great art songs, opera arias, and a solo recital in the beautiful rotunda of the Telfair Academy as part of the 9th season of the Savannah Voice Festival from August 8th through August 22nd. More information about the festival and tickets can be found at www.savannahvoicefestival.org.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming, and it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going, and you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
The Tybee Post Theater is presenting Harry O'Donoghue, an evening of song and story. Join Savannah's favorite Irish folk singer, songwriter, and storyteller, Harry O'Donoghue, and vocalist Molly Elizabeth Gibson on Saturday, August 14th at 8 p.m. More information and tickets can be found at tybeeposttheater.org.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for supporting WRUU. We are a community radio station. We're all volunteers, and the funds that we raise help go towards costs for operating the station. We've got, we have to pay the bills for the lights and the rent and all the equipment and stuff like that. So, and the licensing fee for the FCC license. So thank you very much for all of that. And so thanks all for your support. So Lisa, I am so glad that you are here today. So what's your book called again?
Slanted and Disenchanted.
Wow. Okay, so that would make me think that it's like a fantasy book almost, but it's not, right?
It's not. It's a play off there's an album by this group called Pavement, and it's a kind of an iconic album, and it's called Slanted and Enchanted.
Oh, nice.
And I decided to play with that, and, the readers that I'm reaching out to, they all catch that reference. They're like, oh, like the Pavement album, and I'm like, bingo, you're my
very
ideal
cool.
reader, and it's pretty cool. So, yes, but I have been asked that, but if you just look at the cover and read the back copy, you could see that it's not. I mean, it's a guy and a girl in a tour van with the drum kit behind them, and they're wearing Adidas and Converse and striped shirts. And then the back copy,
nice.
We were pretty direct on the story, and so, but yeah, it's there's a lot of 90s rock references in that. It just felt perfect for them because they are so 90s and disenchanted by everything, and that kind of speaks of the characters.
So they are Gen Xers then?
Well,
if they're in their 20s and the 90s, yeah.
They identify with the 90s, as do I, and that's how they kind of that's how they relate to each other. And there's a lot of these references, pop culture references down to like Raspberry Snapple. I mean, I remember the 90s. I was drinking so much Snapple. If I close my eyes and have a sip of a Raspberry Snapple, it's like 1996 all over again.
Yeah. There's that nostalgia again, yeah.
Yeah, and like even snacks. Like I remember Snackwells. My mom always had Snackwells in the house because they were fat-free, and we were completely disregarding that it's packed with sugar, and they tasted just like an Oreo cookie because they are Oreo cookies. They just use low-fat milk.
Isn't it crazy, like how many things that they, what we were kind of sold on being health stuff was actually really terrible for you?
Totally, like everything was fat-free.
Fat-free, but it's got 500 grams of sugar. It's not no fat in it though.
But gluten-free is the new fat-free. Everything says gluten-free on it, and that's going to be telling of this time period because it's gluten-free, but it's like a pack of bacon.
Right.
It's like,
right.
You know what I mean? It says gluten-free on everything. So it's just, so there's a lot of those like little references, and
like when they stopped doing the French fries with real vegetable oil, and they started using that other one. Like the difference in the taste was like you can't tell now because people are so used to it, but I just remember how like it used to taste back in the day, and then when they switched over, you're like, it's almost like when you switch from a regular soda to a diet soda.
Totally, the difference is shocking. It's jarring at first, and then your taste buds get accustomed to it. But it's just like that, exactly.
Yeah, almost like you ever seen those orange slice fruit sugar candies?
No.
The little gummy fruit candies, like the orange, orange flavored stuff.
Yes.
And like, to me, eating a like orange flavored anything versus eating a real orange, it's so different because like a real orange is sweet, but like almost the the chemical version of what orange is supposed to taste like, they overdo it. It's almost like did you ever see The Matrix?
Yes.
Everything tastes like chicken, right?
Yeah.
And so, since we're talking about like classic references, that's what it makes me think of. Like I was talking to my aunt yesterday about bananas. You know, like the commercial banana that we eat today, it's pretty much the same genetically. It's the same fruit. It's not the one that they based banana flavored stuff off of, though, back in the 40s and 50s when they were developing the banana flavored stuff. That's why banana flavored stuff tastes different than the bananas today. There was a different variety of banana, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. It's almost, we're so synthesized to stuff that when we have the real thing, you know, we're like, oh, this doesn't taste like that, you know, orange or whatever.
Yeah, my son picked up on that. He was like, how come strawberries don't taste like, you know, he noticed that. He was like, this doesn't really taste like a strawberry, but I know this is strawberry flavored.
Right.
And I was like, that's very observant. He's 5. And I said, well, it's like the idea of strawberry. Let's call it strawberry, like strawberry essence.
Yeah, like a cheese product versus real cheese.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in France you get, you know, really good stuff, huh?
Oh my God, France has turned me into such a cheesemonger. I mean, I received such an education in cheese and wine where, I mean, I could take a wine bottle and I can really read it. I know,
nice.
I understand where it comes from, the chateau. I understand what year was better for like a Bordeaux, or, you know, like because it's just dinner conversation. Oh, the shape of the bottle will tell you exactly. You don't even have to read the label. If you see the shape of a bottle, I'll know what region it's from.
Oh, wow.
French people do. It's not because I'm so, you know.
No, yeah, definitely not. It's just, yeah.
It's just, if a bottle looks one way, I know it's from Bordeaux. If it's a little softer and rounder, I know it's from Burgundy. If it's taller, I know it's going to come from Alsace, you know. So it's just, when you're there, you receive such an education in food, and then cheese as well, and all the different regions. And, you know, I can't finish a meal now without a piece of cheese at the end. Otherwise, it doesn't, I'm not finished eating, and my body looks for that piece of cheese.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah, it's definitely different.
I think kind of just going a long way around the circle here, but I feel like that those are all essences that we absorb and we take into our lives and that we incorporate in storytelling. You know, like you're a different person today than you were yesterday or 5 years ago or whatever. And so that first story that you wrote, you know, when you're saying that you were trying to write like, you know, a certain style or whatever, it wasn't necessarily, it was you because you were trying to do it, but it was like you, like when you first learn how to do something, you imitate, you know, and then you learn how to do it, and then you have your own style. So I kind of feel like we all have to have that watershed moment. You know, we all have to kind of, you know, just go through like, well, you know, everything we do is an imitation of something that we've learned, you know, and then you learn how to do it and you make it your own. And, you know, like 15 years ago, if I said, hey, Lisa, you're going to want to have a piece of cheese after every meal, you would have looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
But then today you're like, I want to have cheese. I want my cheese.
If you told me 15 years ago I was going to write a young adult novel set on Long Island, I would have been like, okay, no, I wouldn't have considered that an option at all. I would just be like, where would I find the time to do that?
Right. If somebody had said to you, hey, Lisa, you're gonna move to France, you're gonna meet the love of your life, you're gonna have a child, become an author, and someday in the future, you're gonna be on a radio show in Savannah, Georgia, with a guy you met from the internet. You know, it's like,
be really, really happy.
Yeah,
I'd be super happy.
You're like, what? I'm gonna have Sebastian. You want to play a little bit more, one more for us before we go. We have about 10 minutes left, but are you playing Black Hole Sun?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. He's playing Black Hole Sun for you, Lisa. Oh, nice, Sebastian. That's cool. Thank you very much. Could you hear that? Okay, Lisa.
It was amazing. Thank you so much. You're so wonderful.
I thought that's cool because he's sitting there listening and he's like playing something from the '90s. That's so cool.
Good choice. That's one of my favorite songs from the '90s. It's got to be in my top 10.
Oh,
Thank
me
you very
too.
much.
Do you like that
That's
Temple of
a
the
good
Dog
one.
song too?
Yeah.
Which one, Hunger Strike?
Yeah.
I really
Yeah,
like
that's a good
the
one.
acoustic version that Chris Cornell did. They have it on Spotify, the live version of it. He did it back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
It was like right before he passed away.
Mm.
It's a really good cover.
I
Or it's not a
gotta
cover,
check
but
that out.
really good version of it.
Yeah, that Temple of the Dog was a good one.
That was a good
I
one.
go
Yeah, it was like I'm going hungry.
I think everybody sang to that one. I'm going hungry. Oh my gosh, people at home were like, "What?"
Yeah, like we missed that one.
Oh man, that's one of the things I think about the '90s with the grunge alternative scene or whatever. I set like we were talking about music or whatever. I set my thinking around that same kind of time frame. Like it sounds like you were writing about like your youth and young adulthood. I wrote my story with a lot of those influences too. Kind of like just stuff that going through and whatever. And like I loved or still do the action movies. I love like the comedy action and stuff like that they had. And that's how I wrote mine, was around that 80s style action,
Okay.
I didn't do like the other half of a lot of those movies. I left a lot of that stuff out, but I kept it like fast paced and just I wrote something that I wanted to read. I wrote something that I would enjoy reading. And so when you're talking about that style where you're writing and you're trying to sound a certain way, and then you change and you're like, well, I'm going to write this a different, I'm just going to write, and you wrote for 2 hours a day and, you just kept working on it. And you wrote your novel in, 3 months, that's a big feat. I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is. I'm not saying like that people can't do it. Don't get me wrong. Right. Because anybody can write and everybody can write and everybody should write. But to finish a novel, like less than 1% of all people that say they want to write a book actually finish a novel. And then there are even less of those folks who publish it. And, traditional or non-traditional or whatever you want to call it, however you publish it, there's even less people that publish books. And there are a lot of people out there who publish books. But there are so many more people who they say, oh, I should write a book, or I've been thinking about writing a book. And, and that's great. You should, but the action of doing it, I feel like I love the term, and I don't want to sound cheeky here, but the je ne sais quoi, that's like one of my favorite expressions. It's like I just don't know what, or like the magic of it. I don't know. And I think there's a lot of magic in finishing. There's a lot of synergy that you can build for yourself when you take that loss. Like I said with my first novel, I took that loss and but I bounced back from it and say, you know what, that was a window of time, and I'm going to work on what I want to keep moving forward and working on.
Yeah, that's totally it. And your French accent is really good.
Well, that's about the only French term I know, other than puis-je aller à la toilette? May I please use the restroom? I had for homeroom in high school, we had a French teacher, and she you had, in order to use the restroom, you had to ask her that. Or if she was talking to you in French, I'd say, je ne comprends pas. I don't know. I don't understand you.
Perfect.
That was the
That's
extent
great.
of my French. So.
But it was very polite too, Adam. You said puis, which is may I, and that's very impressive because that's that's not, that's a pretty advanced sentence that you said there. And I think your accent is great.
Well,
So
that's all I know. Oh man! But anyway, so thank you so much, Lisa, for being on the show today, and I definitely would love to have you back on. But your new book is coming out in September.
Yes, on September 21st, Slanted and Disenchanted, and it'll be available in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course, and your Apple Books, your favorite retailer.
And your website is lisacmichaud.com, right?
Yes.
And that's michaud.com. I'm going to put the link in the podcast too. So if anybody is out there listening or just about to miss the show or whatever, or if you've heard there's a part of it and you want to go back and listen to the whole thing, you can. And then Slanted and Disenchanted, it's a young adult book about kind of like a coming of age as an adult, where you get these two characters that they go on this journey and they're playing music and they kind of find each other, right?
Find themselves, find each other, and try and make sense of it all. It starts in 2000 and ends in 2001. So if you want to go back and think of some things that may have happened in that time period, yep, there's some stuff.
My daughter was born in '99, so yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah, and a challenging time. We did see the new world, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. September 11th, 2001 was definitely changed everything.
It's in the book, yeah.
Yeah.
I was 20 when 9/11 happened, and it was
wow.
So,
yeah, that's another thing too. Things that happen in real life. I think we should incorporate them in our stories when we talk about things. So that way, we can move forward and we can share our experiences in our lives. So thank you very much, Lisa. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute delight. Thank you.
Awesome.